Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Franketich. I'm with Peace Hills Trust. I'm here with my two companions in the back there, Georgina Villeneuve, she's my boss, and Tim Laurent. I'm Assistant Vice President at Peace Hills. And there's questions, a couple of questions that this lady who looks suspiciously like Dawn Madabi asked. I'd like to answer right now. First of all, how much is the trust going to cost? Let's just wave a magic wand and everybody's voted and there's a trust. It's going to cost about 1% of the capital value. That's the sort of rule that we follow. It's a little more in the first year, but as time goes by, it'll go down to less than 1%. So if it's a $69 million trust, let's use that number. That's what's going to go into the trust. Let's just assume it's all ratified. It's going to go into the trust. Say it's $69 million. That means about $690,000 is going to be required to run the trust every year. And that pays for trustee fees, it pays for investment fees, it pays for audits, it pays for legal and that sort of stuff. And that's the standard. And again, that'll probably go down over time to less than 1%. But we're really, really conscious at Peace Hills about costs, because every dollar we spend on admin is a dollar that doesn't get out to the nation. Okay, so we're going to run this thing really lean and mean. I want to answer another question, is when this is set up properly, I'll show you how, that it's being done across the country with nations just like Whitefish River. This is going to produce income between depends on the markets, but between $2 and say $4.5 or $5 million every year forever. Okay, and that's your money, that's own source revenue. So that means you don't have to tell anybody or ask anybody how to spend it. It really is up to you, as long as you follow the stuff from the trust. So that's a benefit there, that even if there's some wrong decisions made 5 years from now, the money is there again the next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year, forever. Okay, so it's a huge benefit. All right, now, my partner in crime. Underneath that picture of Brad Pitt, you see right here, I'm a chartered financial analyst. Okay, that's the highest investment degree in the world. I've been working with First Nations and their money, and trust money and settlement money, for getting up to about 28 years now, starting up in the Yukon Territory. So I'm qualified to be an independent financial advisor, which is what I am. Okay? Thanks, Art. Next. I'm also an accountant and all sorts of other stuff, but that doesn't matter. So here we are here. So, per Schedule 3 of the agreement, we're to provide independent financial advice with respect to the financial aspects of the settlement, including the financial considerations for the First Nation and its members in relation to the implementation, management, distribution of settlement proceeds, to deposit thereof into the First Nation's account, rather than into an account managed by INAC. Okay? If you leave this money in INAC, all you make is the 10-year Canadian bond rate, which is right now is about 1.3%. So with inflation, you're losing money every year for 10 years. You don't want that. So if you put it into a trust and set it up the way I'm going to describe, you will make money every year forever. So you don't leave it with the feds. They're not going to do you any favors. Okay, so you're doing the right thing. And there's all sorts of nations all across the country trying to get their INAC dollars back so they can actually make some money with it. Next, Art. So, as a financial, get my glasses, advisor to Whitefish, it's my understanding, as per discussions today, Chief and Council have directed the settlement funds be placed, again, assuming you vote for this, into an interest account rather than, settlement funds placed in a trust rather than the low interest account with INAC for the long-term benefit. Okay, that's really key here. This money is not for this generation alone. This money is for the next 25 generations. As long as the nation is here, this money is here until the trust runs out. And then again, like Tracy says, you can just roll it into a new trust. So we have to be concerned with making this thing grow. It gets a long-term benefit. Everybody's going to get 25 grand, that's great. But what about your kids, your grandkids, their grandkids? The trust has to grow in order to give them benefits out of this thing. Long-term benefit is really, really important, okay? Next page, Art. So how do we do that? How do we best achieve a goal of sustainable wealth that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs? Okay, if you're getting $103 million bucks. if you decided to take a massive, massive PDD, which some First Nations have stupidly done, and hurt the trust, there's nothing left for your kids or your grandkids. This money is being awarded because of wrongs done to generations past. So you want to make sure generations coming have got some benefits. So we've got to make sure we're doing that. And the reason we're doing this and setting it up this way, suggesting it's set up this way, we know it works. It's working with First Nations all across the country. And we have to beat inflation. Okay, inflation is what kills money. We've got, let's assume we've got $69 million going into this account, into the trust account. That's great, that's a lot of dough. In 25 years, if we've got $69 million in the account, we failed. Because $69 million in 20 years won't buy anywhere near what it can buy today. Your purchasing power. Okay, how much did a Skidoo cost 25 years ago? What, 3 grand? What are they now, 30? That's inflation. Okay, so we have to make sure this money is growing every single year so future generations can take the income out and do good things with it. Okay? So, how do we do that? Here we are. So putting it into investments with low yearly returns and little growth like GICs, it's not going to work. They just don't make enough money to cover inflation, okay? They have to be invested in a diversified portfolio. Okay, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. That give us reasonable return and grow the capital. Okay, so our objective here is to take the $69 million, give it to independent investment managers, which we, the trustees, will monitor. They make the money, and we flow it out to the council. That's fine. Into the community development accounts and that sort of thing. Great, but we also want that $69 million to grow a little bit every year, so that instead of paying out $2 million, it's going to pay out 3, then 5, then 7, then 10. So that 69 has got to grow faster than inflation to make sure that happens. That's what we're going to do here. And we know it works because it's working now with First Nations all across the country that we work with. One of them being Nipissing, just down the road. Okay. As I say, lots of First Nations are doing this. We don't think this will work. We know it will work. Okay, Art. So how do we do that? So none of the trustees, in fact, no one in the nation, can take $69 million and properly invest it. You just don't have the skills, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. You've hired professionals, guys like me, to do that for you. Where we start with the trustees is we develop an investment policy statement, and that's in the trust. And what this is, it is basically a job description. We're going to go out, the trustees, with the approval of council, and hire professional, independent money managers. We at Peace Hills don't invest your money. Okay, we go to independent investment firms, give them the money, give them an IPS, which says, this is your marching order, boys. This is how you're supposed to invest it. And then we monitor them like crazy to make sure they're doing their job. That's how we do it. And then we report back to council, and we report back to members, citizens, I guess, all the time, so everybody knows what's going on. We're going to come out every 6 months and say, we started with 69, we made 3, we paid it out, it's not worth 69 anymore, in fact, it's worth 72. There it is. It's all transparent. There's no questions of where's our money, is it hidden, is what's happening with it. All our expenses will be listed, it's all there. It's going to be really transparent. Because if you don't tell people what's going on, they start making it up. And people go nuts over money. I've been dealing with money ever since I got out of school as a professional accountant, and people go crazy with money. They're worried about it. And if people just know what's going on, they go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Everyone's informed. It's not a problem. Then your biggest worry is, okay, we're making $3 million, $4 million, $5 million a year. How should we be spending that? Where's our best place to put that money? With the capital plan and that sort of thing. That's what you should be worried about, not is this money going to be here in 5 years? Are my grandchildren going to have any benefits from this? That's what you don't have to worry about if it's set up properly. Okay? So, as I say, it's a job description. It looks at the trust and creates a work plan for your investment managers. Next, Art. So it sets out the financial goals and objectives of the trust, i.e. we want some income, but we also want to protect the capital. That's rule 1 with money. You don't lose it. Because once it's lost, it's really, really hard to regenerate it. All right? It's a real bear to do that. So it outlines acceptable levels of risk and return and the desired rate of return we're looking for. And that's about an asset mix. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And it's really clear as to the responsibilities. As trustees, what is our job? How do we look after the money? How do we make sure the guys are doing the right thing with the dough? How we monitor them, how they report back to us, to the trustees and to council and to members, citizens, sorry, I keep saying members, I should say citizens. And they're going to come out every 6 months, the investment managers that are hired, and talk to you and tell you how they're doing and why they're doing it. So it just won't be, you send your money to Toronto and hope like heck it works out. These people are going to be here talking to you every 6 months in this room, saying, okay, we started out with, we had 40 million, whatever their half is, and here's what we did, and here's how it went. Because we will be hiring at least 2 managers. With this kind of money, you need 2 managers. Again, that's diversification. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. So the investment policy statement, which I will draft and will get passed, I've been doing that since I started in the Yukon Territory about 22 years ago. It's a really important document. It can make or break your trust, because after it's all said and done, you got $69 million sitting in the account. If that's not making good money, you failed. It's as simple as that, okay? The trust is not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not flowing out money for this generation and this council to use. It's not protecting it, and it's not growing it for future generations. And some of them fall apart. Some trusts just don't work. Okay, and speaking of your question on expenses, we had a trust that we ran from like crazy. It was a small trust. It was producing about $1.3 million a year. Okay, not insignificant, but they didn't have much money anyways, nothing like what you people are getting. And the trustees were burning up about $750,000 of that every year themselves. Okay, didn't leave much for the nation to have, right? So why were these guys spending $750,000? They were spending a huge amount of money. They treated that like their own kingdom. They were having meetings in Vancouver and in Toronto and Calgary and you name it. And they're flying all over the country on the trust dime, treating themselves like kings, okay? That cannot and will not happen here, okay? Because we're the corporate trustees and Georgina is really, really cheap. So that just will not happen. But some trusts, if they're not set up properly, if there's loopholes, people will drive right through them. So you got to watch that, because unfortunately there's a lot of people in the world that don't care about anybody but themselves. How do I take as much money of your money as I can and put it into my pocket? That's what they're worried about. And that happens even with citizens and trustees sometimes. So you got to watch these guys like hawks. We'll be telling you every single dime that's spent on this trust every single year. So it won't be like, Jeff's in Cuba again on the trust dime. It won't happen. You'll know exactly where the money's spent, okay? And again, you need to spend some money because you need to have professional investment managers, trustees, have to have audits to make sure everything's okay. So you have to spend money, but don't spend too much. What else we got here? Okay, you need a CFA, someone like me, to write the investment policy statement. And I've been doing it for a long, long time. They talked about today, your lawyers talked about, it can be difficult to change the trust agreement. The IPS, investment policy statement, is a policy. So as the needs of the nations change, that investment policy statement can be changed. Now, what does that mean? So there's all sorts of other claims people are talking about, the chief mentioned, and your lawyer's saying we've got island claims and this and that and this and that. So say 10 years from now, you get another settlement for $100 million. You might say, you know what, that $100 million now is great, and this trust, the original trust, we can afford to take more risk there now to go for more returns long term because we got this extra 100. So maybe you might say to yourself, let's take on more risk here. Okay, so you can change your investment policy statement. That would come about after lots of discussion, lots of education. We would come out and talk about the pros and the cons. We bring out the investment managers. It's just something that can't happen. But it may change, it may mean that you're changing the way you look at the money and want to take on a bit more risk. And that's fine too, okay? But that would be a big, long discussion before anything like that happened. It just wouldn't happen overnight. Okay? Any questions so far? Concerns? Everybody's awake? Okay, Art. Risk and return, here we go. Every investment has risk, okay? Anyone who says that they're going to have a risk-free investment is lying to you. Every investment has risk, and that's okay. It's how much risk is the nation willing to take on to get a return. We're going to put money in the stock market, put it at risk, but we want to make money on that money. Okay, we want to make dividends from the stocks. We want those stocks to go up in value over time to build the value of the trust. We're going to take some money and lend it, called bonds, to different entities, Government of Canada, Province of Alberta, not Province of Alberta, on Ontario too, maybe the City of Toronto. Lend them the money, they're going to pay us interest. Okay, we're going to generate money with this pot of money we've got. We're putting it at risk, but we're taking on acceptable risk. We're not going to blow our brains out, because you know what? It's not our money to lose. We're fiduciaries. This is not our money. It belongs to the nation and the future generations as well. This isn't our money. I can do what I want with my own money, okay? That's my money. I can't do what I want with your money. That belongs to you, okay? It's always your money. So, two ways as an investor, and that's where we're going to be. You can make a loan to somebody. There we are there. So we're going to have bonds. We can have bank deposits, GICs, etc. Or we can buy ownership, okay, in a company. And the next page shows this. You with me, Art? Okay, what's a bond? Again, it's a loan to somebody. We lend money to the Government of Canada. We lend money to Bell Canada, to TELUS, to different companies. They pay us interest every 6 months, and then when the bond matures, because all bonds mature 2, 3, 5, 10 years, we get our original money back and we go buy another bond. That's how a bond works. Simple. They're not sexy. They don't go up much in value. But what they do is, when the stock market's going down, the bond market goes up. So it gives us some feeling that, okay, the world's not going to come to an end. The other thing we do is buy stocks. Okay, that's ownership in pieces of company. You own shares in the Royal Bank, TELUS, different companies, and diversified, Canadian, US, international. We spread our money around. Why do we put all our money in Canada? Because Canada is only 3% of the stock markets in the world. That's not very diversified. So we put money in different parts of the world to diversify. If you want to get a good pharmaceutical company, you have to go basically to the States. High-tech company, Google, those guys, they're in the States, okay? There's some really, really good consumer stocks. They're coming out of Switzerland. So keeping your money all in Canada is not going to do it. All the Canadian market does really is it's banks, it's digging stuff out of the ground in the form of mines, and that's it. That's really all the market is. And it's insurance. Our market is pretty limited here, okay? So we have to go elsewhere to have good investment opportunities, all right? And remember, this money's around for a long, long time. It's a huge advantage that you've got as a nation. You guys are here forever. So what happened in 2008? Okay, the stock market. So here we go. So let's just say this is dollars up here, and this is time. So the stock market in Canada is rolling along like this. It's good, going great. All of a sudden, boom, it goes for a crap, okay? It goes down 40% in value. People panic. It's the end of the world. You know, start buying ammunition because the world's going to end. What happened after that? Went like this, boom. And now, 2019, it's up here. If you sold down here, you really lost money. None of our investment managers for our trusts sold because they know the world's not going to end. When the market went down 40%, they were buying because the stocks were on sale. So all that looks like now, if you have a long track record, so this is 2008 here, the market was way down. Now, it's ancient history. What happened? No one lost any money in any of our accounts. The value went down, but it was temporary. We didn't lose any money. You only lose money when you sell. Okay, so the market's going to go up. It's going to go down. That happens. But you guys have got a long time frame to make it, and the markets do go up more than they go down. And that happens in wars and in trade wars, all sorts of stuff. It just happens. The markets are going to do what they're going to do. But they do go up over time, and you've got lots of time. Because you're not a person, you're a nation. You're here forever, all right? So you got a chance to make really good money. Yes, ma'am?
I think I asked that question to you before in regards to recession, how that will affect our investments during that time. That's basically what you just described.
Yes. That was 2008 was called, what they call it. Well, who? Subprime. Thank you, voice in the back. That's my boss. It was the worst market since the Great Recession, okay, in the Great Depression, I should say, which was in 1929. But what happened at the end of the day, like I say, and that's where we have to have professional investors. People like us are panicky, okay? We work on fear and greed. If we think the market's going down, we start selling our stocks, we just go crazy. Professional investment managers are looking out 3, 5, 10 years, and they're saying, you know what? I really like TELUS shares. I bought it at 40. All of a sudden now, because of this crash in the market, it's worth 20. I really love it now. They start buying it, and sure enough, 5 years later, they've made a ton of dough because people have panicked and sold. So you know what? Recessions are going to happen. I hope there's not another depression. I hope there isn't, but there might be. Sorry.
Just time, that's all.
Oh.
10 minutes.
5. Oh, right. You're right. Okay. Sorry. Anyways, I like to talk about the markets. I'm a gambler. I've got my time limit. Okay. So we know that it won't. You're going to go through markets up and down. You'll be fine. Okay. Now, next one. Okay, risk and return. There's always risks. There's two ways that we look commonly at risk, and that means you don't make any money on your bonds, and no one has ever defaulted on a bond in any one of our accounts with any of our investment managers. Never happened. And the other one is they're not going to pay, the stocks aren't going to pay dividends. They always pay dividends. I mean, how do the banks pay dividends year after year after year? Because they rip people like you and me off. We hate the banks, but we love them in our portfolio. Okay, next. Here's risk and return. This sums it all up. We don't mind more return here, more risk here. We don't mind moving out here. If we want to make have very little risk, we keep our money in cash and money market, but we don't make much dough. So we don't mind going up the ladder here to buy stocks. We're taking on more risk, and we should be getting more return for it. And we do. Our average trust in the last 10 years through a very strong market has made about 10%. Okay, we don't mind taking on some risk, but we got to get rewarded for it. Now, asset mix. Art? Yep, there it is. Good. Basically, this describes how much risk you take on. What asset mix is, you want a diversified portfolio, so stocks and bonds. If you have stocks, you have usually more risk because they're more volatile. They go up and down with the markets. Bonds are kind of boring. They just kind of cruise along. So if you want to take on more risk in a portfolio and hopefully get more return in the long run for future generations, you have more stocks in there. If you want to take on less risk, you have more bonds and less stocks. Now, the normal average pension plan in this country is about 60-40. I don't know if I've got that in there. Next page, Art, just for a sec. The normal pension plan is about 60-40, so cash and bonds about 40, Canadian stocks, these add up to 60. Most nations start at 60-40, but bonds aren't paying very much right now, so most guys are actually having less bonds and more stocks. But that's a diversified portfolio, okay? You have money in bonds, Canada, US, international stocks. That's the asset mix. So where it comes down, we have to decide on what the trustees want and that sort of stuff, but you're going to be in there somewhere in the 60-40, maybe 65-35. We're going to take on some risk, but we need the stocks to grow the portfolio. Without growth, we're not going to make anything for future generations. Okay? But that's a usual mix. As I say, 10 years down the road, you get another $100 million settlement and you're 60-40 right here. You might say, let's take on more risk because we can make more money in the long term. You might say, let's be 20 bonds and 80 stocks. But that's a discussion to think about in the future. But that's how you adjust your risk like that. You also adjust it on making sure that most of your stocks pay dividends, and that's what we're going to have in the investment policy for our investment managers. That makes them a lot more stable and takes away some of the ups and downs. Basically, that's it. Questions?